Forever. Dog.
Baby. It's a strange time in Hollywood. A strange time. Ominous portents are in the air. Just on my drive to work today, I noticed that the LA River had turned into blood. Just a gushing torrent of blood. I also saw what I think was a cloud of locusts circling above the giant minion at the top of Universal Studios Hill. Strange times in Hollywood, strange times. Warner Brothers is selling to Netflix, maybe, unless Paramount and the Saudis and Jared Kushner and the president can stop them. The top 4 highest grossing movies of the year are for children. Disney made a $1 billion investment in OpenAI, which means that while you can't wear a Mickey Mouse costume to Disneyland, you can ask AI to show you a picture of Mickey Mouse dunking his balls in a Frappuccino. Quentin Tarantino is beefing with Paul Dano. Strange times, strange times. But if you've come to Movies Baby this week to hear a eulogy for the movies, you've come to the wrong place. You've come to the wrong place, my friend. You can go somewhere else for that point of view. You can go to any of the clickbait critics on YouTube and Instagram and wherever else to get all the doomsday prophecies that you want. But not here. Not here. Is this the end of the movies? Netflix just killed Hollywood. We're so cooked. We're so cooked. Shut up. And look, I want to be clear. I don't think that that Warner Brothers selling to Netflix is in and of itself good for the movies. Just like I don't think any of the hundreds of studio sales and purchases that have gone on over the last 125 years were in and of themselves good for the movies. But I know that they happened, and I know that the movies are still here. And if Netflix does succeed in buying Warner Brothers, I believe that the movies will still be here after that too. Because unlike half of these so-called movie lovers who run Instagram accounts with names like Film Buzz, I actually go to the movies. I go to the movies 2 to 3 times a week. And what I see when I go to the movies is not a medium on its deathbed. I also don't see a medium at its creative peak by any stretch of the imagination. What I do see is a medium in transition, which, knowing the history of the movies, makes me very excited for the future of the movies. Because this moment that we're in right now, this exact moment, happens every 7 to 10 years. There's an external threat to the movies. In the past, it's been TV. Oh, people are watching TV now. Now in the year 2025, it's streaming, it's AI. And the other factor is ownership changes at the major studios. In 1982, the year I was born, Columbia Pictures, the home of both Frank Capra and William Castle, the scrappy little studio that became a major player in Hollywood, Columbia Pictures, was bought by Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola bought Columbia Pictures and held on to it for about a decade. That didn't end the movies. That didn't even end Columbia Pictures. In the 90s, they made Boys in the Hood and Bram Stoker's Dracula. A lot of great movies. Now cut to 2025. Skydance buys Paramount. Netflix is on track to buy Warner Brothers. And I'll grant you that there are some unique circumstances in terms of Paramount, Skydance buying Paramount and Warner Brothers buying Universal that we haven't seen before. But guess what? There are always unique circumstances when somebody buys a movie studio. Coca-Cola bought Columbia Pictures in 1982. If that didn't end the movies, Netflix buying Warner Brothers is not going to end the movies. But we'll dive into the specifics of the Warner Brothers Netflix deal and the Paramount factor and the Trump factor and all of that later in the show. Because there are some unique circumstances that deserve looking into, that deserve analysis and discussion. But if you came here for doomsday prophecies, you came to the wrong frickin' place. Let's just all take a big old deep breath. Let's not lose our heads. The sky isn't falling. The movies aren't going anywhere. Movie theaters aren't going anywhere. Paul Dano is fine. He's fine. And sure, it was so heartwarming to see so many A-listers rush to his defense. Like he was about to be executed for a crime he didn't commit. Just because Quentin Tarantino called him weak and a bad actor or whatever he said. Paul Dano is fine. He got a text about it, and he laughed about it, and then he put on a Robert Bresson Blu-ray, and he hasn't thought about it since. He's fine. He's fine. And quickly, while we're on the subject, Tarantino's list of the 20 best movies of the 21st century, a list, by the way, that Joe, the Philly movie freak, and I will be doing our version of on this show later this month before the end of the year. Tarantino's list, which is where this Dano take took place, as you know, when he was discussing There Will Be Blood, which he said would have been higher than 5th on his list, if not for Paul Dano's terrible performance. He also weirdly called There Will Be Blood a two-hander. It's not a two-hander. There's a lead actor and a supporting actor. That's definitely, I never thought of There Will Be Blood as a two-hander. Did you? Did anybody think of There Will Be Blood as a two-hander? He hates Paul Dano so much for whatever reason. It like he the mere presence of Paul Dano in There Will Be Blood was outsized in his mind because of how much he dislikes Paul Dano. It's not a two-hander. And Paul Dano's great in it. But all that aside, that list was one of the best lists I've seen in a while. And I don't agree with 90% of it. But outside of John Waters' annual top 10 lists, that's the best list I've seen in a long time. It was weird. It was personal. It was, in my opinion, largely wrong. It was interesting. It was specific. That's a great list. West Side Story, The Devil's Rejects. He had a Tony Scott movie at number 7. That's a great list. That's a great list. And in saying so, am I endorsing Quentin Tarantino the person? No! No! That's a great list. That's a great list. And this is Movies Baby with 5 Ys. I am so glad you're here with me for another episode. Will you please, ever so kindly, roll that theme song?
The backbone of this country is the independent film critic. The power of movies must be protected. The best thing about movies is the feeling they give. It's a feeling I want to feel every day. Movies, baby! Movies, baby! Movies, baby! Movies, baby!
I love a raffle.
Welcome to Movies Baby. I'm Brett Boehm, a.k.a. the Georgia Movie Dog. Go Dogs. And I'm coming to you live from the San Fernando Valley. And I want to say, first of all, I am sorry. I am so sorry that this episode is so late. These episodes are supposed to come out on Monday. Historically, they do. And this one is coming out on Freaky fucking Friday, baby. Holy shit, this is late. And I could list all the reasons why. All the little things went wrong in my life this week. Oh, poor me. But I'm fine. Everything's fine. And the main reason, if I'm being honest, which I always try to be, the main reason that this episode got delayed for a couple days is I didn't know what I wanted to say. I didn't know what I wanted to say about all the stuff. About Warner Brothers and Netflix. About Tarantino and Paul Dano. About the Golden Globes. I also didn't get to see No Other Choice until 10:30 on Monday night. I had to sleep on that movie. So fucking good. I couldn't just immediately start talking about it. Had to let it simmer for a couple days. But I'm ready to talk now. I'm ready to talk about the movies that I saw, the movie industry, the movie awards, all about the movies. I am ready now. But the number one thing I want to say is thank you. As the year winds down, I want to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you to everyone who supports this show in any way that you support it. And thank you in particular to all of the Movies Baby Patreon subscribers. All of you who literally give us money every month to keep talking about the movies. I am so appreciative, I don't even have the words for it. I love doing this show. I love talking about the movies every week. I love talking with you about the movies on Patreon. And I want you to know, I want the Patreon subscribers to know that your investment in this show is not going to waste. It is not going to waste, baby. Because I record this show in a little corner of the Forever Dog Studios that we call the Dog Den. And this little corner, this little den, is currently attached via wires and cables to one of our main studios, one of our main recording hubs. And look, I'll take whatever version of the show I can get. I'll do this out of a cardboard box into a tin can if it comes to that. But being connected to this main studio does mean that it limits the times when I'm able to record this year. But next year, next year, baby, thanks to your Patreon subscriptions, and I'm not kidding. Literally thanks to your Patreon subscriptions, we are going to be able to make the Dog Den, this little corner of Forever Dog Studios, an independent and self-sufficient recording hub next year, which means I can record whatever the fuck I want, baby. You might regret it. You might regret giving me the money to enable us to do this. But I don't think so. I think it's going to turn out pretty good for everybody. We're also, fingers crossed, going to give the Dog Den a little upgrade. So stay tuned for more on that. Coming to you next year. The headline is, I am very, very excited about the future of this show. And I hope that you are too. I cannot wait for where we're headed. And I hope you join me on the journey. And speaking of Patreon, on our Patreon bonus show, Weekend at Bergman's, where we pit art house movies versus popcorn movies in a fight to the death, and we have to be honest, we are currently nearing the end of our 1980s mega tournament. This has been going on for over a year at this point. A year and a couple months. And we are finally nearing the climax. We are down to the Elite Eight is the next episode. And we're going to finish this tournament by the end of the year. We will determine the ultimate 1980s movie by the end of this year. So now is the time. Now is the time to join the Patreon, because this thing is getting to an almost unbearably tense climax, this 1980s tournament. And you are not going to want to miss the Elite Eight, the Final Four, and the championship round. You're not going to want to miss it. You're not going to want to miss it. There were some real shockers in the Sweet 16. I am still quivering in my boots from some of the shocks that I endured in the Sweet 16. And that's only on the Patreon. But today on Movies Baby, I saw 3 movies that I can't wait to talk about. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 from Blumhouse, No Other Choice, the new Park Chan-wook movie, and The Secret Agent. The Secret Agent. I also might throw in a word about SISU, Road to Revenge, which I also saw coming up later in the show. I'm also going to dive into the chaotic fracas that is the Warner Brothers sale, previously alluded to. I'm going to talk box office, see what's going on at the old box office. But before any of that, let's talk about the Golden Frickin' Globes, people. The Golden Globe nominations came out this week, and just a reminder, the Golden Globes are no longer voted on by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. Back in 2023, the Globes were bought by Penske Media, which owns Variety, Deadline, The Hollywood Reporter, and IndieWire, among other publications. That's right, all those publications are owned by the same company. Now, it is still a voting body of journalists, but it is now a much wider, broader group of global film journalists. So that means less wacko nominations, unfortunately. So no more Burlesque for Best Picture, no more Best Actor nomination for Johnny Depp in The Tourist. It means more critical favorites, more art house movies included, which is great. So let's see what they came up with. Let's see what they came up with here this year. Starting with Best Picture Drama. The nominees are Frankenstein, Hamnet, It Was Just an Accident, Sentimental Value, Sinners, and The Secret Agent. Holy shit! Is this the Golden Globes or the Palme d'Or? I love seeing It Was Just an Accident, Sentimental Value, and The Secret Agent all nominated. Between the three of them, they won basically all the awards at Cannes this year. None of them are American films. I love it. I love seeing three highly deserving movies, regardless of where they were made or who made them or what company produced them or distributed them, getting nominated here. That's great. I love it. The only real surprise here in terms of quality is Frankenstein. I enjoyed Frankenstein. I liked Frankenstein. I liked the spectacle of it all, but it's not a great movie. It's not a great movie. I think a better, more deserving choice here than Frankenstein would have been Train Dreams, Clint Bentley's Train Dreams, which did get a nomination, which we'll get to in a second. Surratt. I mean, if you're doing movies that won at Cannes this year, why not include one of the best of them, Surratt? Die My Love would have been a better choice over Frankenstein. Black Bag, Soderbergh's Black Bag. Sorry Baby, Eva Victor's Sorry Baby. But no, they gave it to Frankenstein. So who's going to win, though? Who's going to win this category? My guess is probably Sinners. It's the only movie besides One Battle After Another that's picked up any of the early awards for Best Picture. And in general, the Best Picture race seems to be coming down to a Sinners versus One Battle After Another competition. But anything can happen. Last year, in the early days, it was Emilia Perez versus The Brutalist. Seemed to be the Best Picture frontrunners, and then that all changed. If it's not Sinners, it'll probably be Hamnet, I would think. Those are probably your two betting favorites. My personal pick out of these 5, 6 movies, Jafar Panahi's It Was Just an Accident. My favorite movie of the year so far that I've seen. Now let's go on to Best Picture Musical or Comedy. Best Picture Musical or Comedy. And the nominees are Blue Moon, Begonia, Marty Supreme, No Other Choice, Nouvelle Vague, and One Battle After Another. Richard fucking Linklater, people. Let's give him a hand. 2 nominations for Best Picture. You gotta love that. 2 nominations. I wasn't surprised to see Blue Moon in here because it seems like the more conventional critical fave. I was very glad, though, to see Nouvelle Vague getting a nom, which is one of my favorite movies of the year. I couldn't quite tell if Nouvelle Vague was like getting any recognition or picking up any kind of steam, so I was very excited to see it get a nom here. That's awesome. And congrats to Richard Linklater, one of our great living filmmakers. That's awesome. 2 nominations. 2 nominations. But One Battle After Another is going to win this walking away, I think. I haven't seen Marty Supreme yet. That's probably the only other competitor here in terms of what's going to win. But it's going to be One Battle After Another, right? I mean, I think that's pretty clear. Now, the big snub, quote unquote snub in this category that people are talking about is Wicked for Good, which didn't get a Best Picture nomination. But that's only a snub based on reputation and cultural impact. The movie is terrible. And so I'm glad to see it not get a nomination here on reputation alone. I'm also not crazy about Begonia getting a nomination here. I assume that slot was reserved for either Begonia or Weapons or Eddington. In which case, if there has to be a slot for Begonia or Weapons or Eddington, I would have gone with Eddington for the nomination. Not Begonia. Not Begonia. Would love to see No Other Choice steal this, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I loved One Battle After Another. I love One Battle After Another. It deserves it. It'll get it. Let's move on to female actor in a drama. Female actor in a drama. The nominees are Eva Victor for Sorry Baby, Jennifer Lawrence for Die My Love, Jessie Buckley for Hamnet, Julia Roberts for After the Hunt, Renata Rensve for Sentimental Value, and Tessa Thompson for Hedda. First of all, hell yeah, Eva Victor. Oh my God. Oh my God. I remember when you used to swing by our little tiny New York studio to guest on our podcasts. I remember when you invented front-facing comedy videos on TikTok. And now look at you, baby! No need to say sorry, baby. I say hell yeah, baby. Freaking Golden Globe nominated. I love it. I love it. And well-deserved. Well-deserved. Great movie and a really great performance. I love it. I love it. The other surprise, which is less exciting, is Julia Roberts, who I love. Metro Atlanta's own Julia Roberts getting a nomination here for After the Hunt, which, she's always good, but this movie was a total dud. I mean, critically and commercially. I will say, about a month ago at the AMC 16 in Burbank, they put up these huge After the Hunt FYC posters right across from the theater. And I remember thinking, what's going on here? What's happening here? This movie doesn't deserve an FYC campaign. What is going on here? And now I know. It was to get Julia Roberts a nomination, and she got it. So who's going to win, though? Who's going to win? I think this is going to Jessie Buckley for Hamnet, which is great. Jessie Buckley's amazing, and she's amazing in Hamnet. But in my opinion, who should win? I haven't seen Hedda yet. I'm going to watch it this week. I've seen the other movies. And so, having not seen Hedda, put that as an asterisk on this, I would give this to Renata Rensve for Sentimental Value. It wasn't my favorite movie of the year, but her performance was one of my favorite performances of the year. She's absolutely incredible. Let's make the Renata Rensve ascendancy official and give her a freaking Golden Globe. She deserves it. On the flip side, let's make the Jessie Buckley ascendancy official and give her a Golden Globe. Either one is well deserved. Moving on to male actor in a drama. The nominees are Dwayne Johnson for The Smashing Machine, Jeremy Allen White for Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, Joel Edgerton for Train Dreams, Michael B. Jordan for I almost said The Sinners. Take off the just Sinners. Oscar Isaac for Frankenstein, and Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent. Big surprise here is Dwayne Johnson. Similar to After the Hunt, The Smashing Machine was a movie that arrived with a lot of anticipation, but landed with a thud, I think, both critically and commercially. Was not expecting to see it come awards season. But much like Julia Roberts, I had been reading that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had been putting in the work behind the scenes. That man does not give up on a dream, and it's his dream to win a Golden Globe or an Oscar. I don't think he will, but he did work hard enough to get nominated here. So congrats to him. Jeremy Allen White, also a surprise, because I thought the hype had run out on that hype train as well. Everyone was saying he would get nominated, but then the movie, eventually everyone's going to see the movie. You can say whatever bullshit you want to say, but eventually everyone has to see the movie. And when they did, I kind of assumed that was the end of his award season hopes. And it's not that he's even bad. It's just a bad movie that doesn't lend itself to a great performance. He's trying to make it work. It's just not working. But he got the nomination, so good for him. Oscar Isaac is also kind of a surprise. I mean, really, all of these Frankenstein nominations are a surprise, minus maybe the Jacob Elordi nomination, which we'll get to in a second. I kind of like this though because I dug Oscar Isaac's weird little gothic performance in Frankenstein. I just didn't realize that enough other people felt the same way I did. So I'm surprised to see him here. Now, who will win this award? This feels like the most wide open of the major categories, so it's hard to say. But I think Michael B. Jordan takes this one. He's so good in Sinners. He's so dynamic. It was a year of double roles, and I think Michael B. Jordan did it the best. It's been a couple years of doppelganger performances, but his is definitely, I think, my favorite. So I feel like this probably goes to Michael B. Jordan. Wagner Moura and Joel Edgerton are also strong candidates, but they probably split the art house vote between them, and Jordan gets the consensus. I think that's your betting favorite. Who should get it? I mean, Michael B. Jordan should get it. Fuck it. I mean, Wagner Moura is amazing, The Secret Agent. Joel Edgerton's amazing in Train Dreams. But Michael B. Jordan should get it. He should definitely get it. Female actor in a musical or comedy, your nominees are Amanda Seyfried for The Testament of Anne Lee, which hasn't come out yet here in LA. I'm very excited to see that. Chase Infinity for One Battle After Another. Cynthia Erivo for Wicked for Good. Emma Stone for Begonia. Kate Hudson for Song Sung Blue, baby. And Rose Byrne for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick Ya. Song Sung Blue, hell yes. Cannot wait for this movie. It's going to be some version of a majestic train wreck, and I cannot wait for Hugh Jackman as a Neil Diamond impersonator and Kate Hudson as his counterpart in Song Sung Blue. I cannot wait. I cannot wait. And I know the narrative that's out there is that Wicked for Good got snubbed by the Globes because it didn't get nominations for picture or director. But in my opinion, it didn't get snubbed at all because it's lucky it got any nominations, any major category nominations. This is not Cynthia Erivo's best work by a long shot. Emma Stone has truly entered Meryl Streep territory now with the auto nomination. And she was very good in Begonia, but like, come on. This is just like, she just gets the auto nom now. She's our Meryl Streep. And that's fine. She's great. Who should win? Who do I think should win? It's the same person I think will win. Rose frickin' Byrne, baby. Best performance of the year. Rose Byrne in If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. I don't know if she's going to win the Oscar because too many of these frickin' Brentwood losers won't watch their If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You screeners. I got to think Jessie Buckley's probably the front runner for the Oscar. But Rose Byrne's going to win this Globe, baby. She's going to win this Globe, and she freaking deserves it. She deserves a lot more than that. Male actor in a musical or comedy. Your nominees are Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon. George Clooney for J. Kelly. Jesse Plemons for Begonia. Lee Byung-hun for No Other Choice. Leonardo DiCaprio, heard of him? for One Battle After Another, and Timothée Chalamet for Marty Supreme. This is a stacked category. This is stacked, and this is a very tough decision. George Clooney is kind of the only outlier here for Jay Kelly. I'm not sure he deserved a nom for Jay Kelly. I've seen it. I'm not going to talk about it till next week. I would have much preferred to see the guy who played Godard in Nouvelle Vague to get the nomination here, Guillaume Marbeck. He was amazing, and the Globes is apparently aware of Nouvelle Vague. I think he would have been a better nomination, but they got to get those A-listers on camera, baby. So George Clooney, much like Emma Stone, getting the auto nom. But otherwise, it's hard to agree with these nominations. This is a really this is a great category. This is a stacked category. This will be a very interesting stress test of the Chalamet promotional tour for Marty Supreme, which has been, like all the Chalamet press tours, absolutely exciting and funny and silly. But it seems to be wearing on people's nerves a little bit. They don't like the ego of it all. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You think Leonardo DiCaprio is humble? He's just awkward in interviews. He's not humble. The Chalamet press tour is a blast. And maybe I'm just reading into things too much. Maybe it's a minority of just sort of internet commenters who are feeling this way. So this will be a very interesting stress test of whether or not the Chalamet promotional tour has been getting on people's nerves, because I have not seen Marty Supreme yet. I can't wait. There's been a lot of there's been almost unequivocal praise for his performance. People are saying it's the best performance of his career. And considering he nearly won the Oscar last year for A Complete Unknown, you would think that sets him up for some major, major awards this year for Marty Supreme. But we'll see. We'll see. As we know, it's about more than just the performance. It's about a lot more than just the performance. And he hasn't actually won any of the early awards yet. And we're not into the big ones yet, but he hasn't picked up any trophies yet in these, New York Critics Circle, LA Film Circle, all those sort of early awards. So we'll see. We'll see. The other frontrunners here have got to be Ethan Hawke and Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm going to say, I think Ethan Hawke takes this. I think Ethan Hawke grabs this Globe. I think this is Ethan Hawke's Globe for Blue Moon. Who do I think should win? Having not seen Marty Supreme yet, I think Lee Byung-hun for No Other Choice should win this award. More on that later. Female actor supporting. The nominees are Amy Madigan for Weapons, Ariana Grande for Wicked for Good, Elle Fanning for Sentimental Value, Emily Blunt for The Smashing Machine, Inga Ibstadter Lilius for Sentimental Value, and Teyana Taylor for One Battle After Another. Surprises here, in my opinion, Emily Blunt for The Smashing Machine. I cannot believe The Smashing Machine picked up 2 nominations in the major categories. It just was not that impactful or precise enough of a movie, I think, to be this recognized. But they've been working behind the scenes. Oh, they work behind the scenes. Elle Fanning, who I love, is also a bit of a surprise here. Sentimental Value had so many great performances, and they're all nominated here. But Elle Fanning is playing a little bit more of a kind of functionary role in the plot. Her role is more of a sort of offsetting other characters' performances, balancing out some of the dynamics, and she does very well. It's just not a particularly sort of flashy performance or memorable performance. And I love a really good subtle performance, a nuanced performance, but this is just a very sort of functionary performance within the plot, and she does a great job, but I don't know if it needed to get a nomination here, particularly not at the exclusion of Wunmi Masaka in Sinners, who is the big snub, probably the biggest snub overall in these Globes nominations. Shocking to not to not see Wunmi Masaka, who was so good in Sinners, to see her not nominated here. This is Ariana Grande. This is the only nomination for Wicked for Good that makes any sense. I mean, the movie is so built for Ariana Grande to succeed in. It plays into her strengths so well. I don't think she's a particularly versatile actor or performer, but she doesn't have to be versatile in this role. This is just such her sweet spot, and she nails it in all of her little moves and gestures, and she does spoiled princess with a heart of gold just flawlessly. It's just, she nails it. She nails it. And the songs are great. Terrible movie, but I understand her getting nominated here. Who's going to win, though? This probably comes down to Amy Madigan versus Teyana Taylor. They seem to be the front runners. Both just incredibly unique, dynamic, memorable performances. And they also, I love it coming down to Madigan versus Taylor too, because they both exist in very sort of limited, targeted ways in the movies that they're in. Truly like the definition of supporting performances. Scene-stealing performances. Who wins? It's tough to say. I'm gonna say Teyana Taylor takes it. The Globes clearly love One Battle After Another, and it's going to win a bunch of awards, and I think this is one of them. I think this goes to Teyana Taylor, slight edge over Amy Madigan. Who should win? I think Teyana Taylor should win. I love Amy Madigan in Weapons. She saves the movie. If this was an MVP award, I would give it to Amy Madigan, but it's not. It's just a Best Performance award, and in that case, I'm going to go with Teyana Taylor. Lit the screen on fire. So memorable. Stole every scene she was in. Overpowered Leonardo DiCaprio. And I'm not just talking about because that's the dynamic of their characters, but did it so well and convincingly. I've never seen Leonardo DiCaprio sort of like sheepish. And it doesn't work without Teyana Taylor making him that way. The power of her performance makes DiCaprio's sort of sheepishness believable. Male actor supporting. The nominees are Adam Sandler and Jay Kelly, Benicio del Toro in One Battle After Another, Jacob Elordi in Frankenstein, Paul Mescal in Hamnet, Sean Penn in One Battle After Another, and Stellan Skarsgård in Sentimental Value. Why is Paul Mescal here in supporting? I do appreciate it as a feminist critique of Hollywood, resigning him to supporting, and while Jessie Buckley is considered the lead. I like it as a feminist critique of Hollywood, but it's not accurate. He's a co-lead in every sense of the word. Buckley and Mescal are co-leads in Hamnet. I don't know what he's doing here in the supporting category, but fuck it, who cares? Fuck Paul Mescal, you little supporting bitch. This award probably goes to Benicio del Toro. There was just so much enthusiasm for his performance, and deservedly so. It is one of the most just fucking just lovable performances you're going to see on a screen ever. You just love him. You love the character. You love everything that comes out of his mouth. You love his little dance when he gets pulled over for DUI. Everything about it is amazing. And he's so good. He's so good. And you can't overvalue. That's a subtle performance. That's a nuanced performance. And the effortlessness of it is a testament to how good he is. How good he is as an actor. But that being said, I know Sean Penn is less likable as a person, and that the character he plays is way less likable than the character that Benicio del Toro plays. That character is so vile and is so disgusting and is so hard to look at and watch on screen. And Benicio's performance is so enjoyable. But if we're just talking about the performances themselves, I have to be honest, I would give it to Sean Penn over Benicio del Toro because of how memorably, uniquely vile that character is. Sean Penn's performance is the rotten soul, the rotten, pathetic soul of America in 2025. In every sense. The walk, the disgusting way he licks his fingers to smooth down his Hitler hairdo when he goes to talk to some fascist senator about joining some underground Illuminati militia. Everything in that performance is so perfectly vile. I would give it to Sean Penn. I hate to say it because I love the Benicio performance. But the Sean Penn performance, without that performance, the movie doesn't have its pathetic, evil antagonist. And it needs it. It needs it. It needs it. But if you give it to Benicio, I'll jump up on my freaking feet off of my couch and clap so loud it wakes the neighbors. I would love for Benicio to get this. Stellan Skarsgård, also a major competitor here. Maybe do Benicio and Sean Penn split the one battle after another vote and Stellan sneaks in and grabs it? I don't know. I'm going to say Benicio gets this. I think Benicio wins this, and that's great. Sorry, Jacob Elordi. I know they had you in that makeup chair for 8 hours a day, but it's an honor to be nominated, baby. Best Director. The nominees are Chloe Zhao for Hamnet, Guillermo del Toro for Frankenstein, Jafar Panahi for It Was Just an Accident, Joachim Trier for Sentimental Value, Paul Thomas Anderson for One Battle After Another, and Ryan Coogler for Sinners. If it was up to me, I would switch out Chloe Zhao and Guillermo del Toro for Park Chan-wook and Mary Bronstein. But these are solid nominations overall. Like the Oscars, I think the Globes is going to come down to Ryan Coogler versus Paul Thomas Anderson. And I think this is going to be... I do think Ryan Coogler could win this. Christopher Nolan just did a whole screening here in LA. Christopher Nolan is a hell of a guy to have on your side going into awards season. So Coogler could definitely win this. But I just think this is PTA's departed year. I think this is the year when he finally gets the awards. This guy has never won an Oscar or a Golden Globe. Never. His generation Scorsese has never won an Oscar or a Golden Globe, and I think this is his departed year. I think this is the year he finally gets one. I think this goes to PTA. Last but not least, the weirdest category, and kind of my favorite, cinematic and box office achievement. The nominees are Avatar: Fire and Ash, F1, K-pop Demon Hunters, Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning, Sinners, Weapons, Wicked for Good, Zootopia 2. What the hell is this category? I love it in concept, but it has yet to figure out what it is. Because the nominees make me very confused about what is going on here and what is the criteria for this category. What is the rubric? Cinematic and box office achievement. Okay, first of all, K-pop Demon Hunters, which I loved. My family and I went to one of the sing-along screenings. K-pop Demon Hunters has no place in a category that honors box office achievement. It's a Netflix movie that was only released in theaters in these sort of limited special screenings because it set the world on fire. But you shouldn't be nominated for box office achievement if you didn't even get a proper theatrical wide release. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Sorry, K-pop Demon Hunters, you don't belong in this category. I also don't think you should be nominated here if you are also nominated in one of the Best Picture categories. I think if you get a Best Picture nomination, then you are disqualified from this category. So Sinners should not be here either. Now, some major, or I should say possible snubs, because again, I don't really understand what this category is. But some possible snubs. The biggest one is Ne Zha 2, the animated film from China that is by far the biggest box office movie of the year. It is the highest grossing animated movie ever in the history of movies, and it is the 5th highest grossing movie ever, period, full stop. The only movies that have ever grossed more than Ne Zha 2 at the box office are Avatar: Way of Water, Avatar, Avengers: Endgame, and Titanic. Other than that, no movie has ever made more money at the box office than Ne Zha 2. Now, maybe the argument is that there's not enough cinematic achievement in Ne Zha 2, so it only is the box office, but I mean, it's as good as Zootopia 2. I don't know. Again, I don't know what this category is. Lilo and Stitch, the highest grossing American movie of the year. Should that not just be an automatic bid? I guess, again, the argument is that there's not enough cinematic achievement in Lilo and Stitch. And I guess same for a Minecraft movie, the second highest grossing American movie of the year. Or is it now third? Did Zootopia? I think Zootopia just passed it. And if not, it will. Yes, Zootopia 2 just passed it. So third highest grossing movie of the year. Okay, so you can say Zootopia 2 out of Lilo and Stitch, Minecraft movie, and Zootopia 2. Zootopia 2 is the most cinematic of the three. Okay, all right, I guess. But these nominations happened before Zootopia 2 had earned all of its box office. Avatar: Fire and Ash, by the way, hasn't even. I know that is like the most automatic box office win ever, but it hasn't come out yet. So technically, it's still there's still no. We still have no box office numbers for it. But assuming this has to be a mix of box office achievement and some degree of cinematic achievement, what about Superman? I mean, I was not the biggest fan of Superman as a movie. I think it was, what did I give it? Like maybe 3 stars? I think it was good. It was good. But a lot of people really liked it. And it certainly made a lot of money. It's still top 10, right, at the box office? It's number 9. It's made more money than Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Although, not as good of a movie as Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, in my opinion. So maybe Superman must have been first off. Superman must have been first off this list. And you know what? I kind of love it. I kind of love how much the tide has turned against comic book movies. I kind of love it. Superman must have been first off. First off. But what about one that I am disappointed to see here? To not see here is The Conjuring Last Rites. It's the 12th biggest movie of the year, box office wise, which is bigger than Weapons at 18. And in my humble little opinion, many people will disagree with me, I thought it was a better horror movie than Weapons. There's a lot I like in Weapons. It was just too scattered and unfocused and didn't pay off enough of its promise. Whereas Conjuring Last Rites was such a just sort of classical horror movie in all the best ways and had some really good horror set pieces in it. I would have liked to seen Conjuring Last Rites here. What a fun nomination that would have been. But I assume the argument is Weapons, in most people's opinion, is a much higher cinematic achievement and did well enough at the box office that it gets a place here. Who's going to win? I would assume this is Avatar Fire and Ash's race to lose. I mean, if you're talking about cinematic and box office achievement and the two have to sort of be in some, it has to have both. I assume this is going to be Avatar Fire and Ash's race to win. But my pick, a movie that I honestly have not stopped thinking about since I saw it, it might crack my top 10 of the year, is Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Mission Impossible Final Reckoning is the best popcorn movie of the year. It made enough money to qualify as a box office success. It's still in the top 10 at number 10, barely hanging on. It will get knocked out when Avatar Fire and Ash comes out, but it's number 10 for another couple weeks. I think this should go to Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. Give old Tommy Cruise the send-off he deserves. Give this to Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. The Golden Globes are airing on January 5th. What am I, a fucking commercial? Tune in, baby. I'll be tuning in. We'll see. Maybe we can do something fun for the Globes. Maybe a little sort of pre-show live stream, something like that. We'll see. Stay tuned. Now let's talk about this fucking Warner Brothers fiasco. For anyone that needs a recap on how we got to Netflix buying Warner Brothers, allow me to present a brief history of the events leading up to this moment in time. It all started in April 2022 when Discovery merged with AT&T's Warner Media to create a new company called Warner Brothers Discovery. And the chairman of the board of this company, John Malone, a famous old media mogul, installed his favorite acolyte, David Zaslav, as CEO and president. And David Zaslav looked in the mirror that morning and said, "I made it, ma! Top of the world! I'm a real Hollywood mogul like Robert Evans. And much like Robert Evans, my career will last for 1,000 years and be completely free of controversy." And then John Malone whispered into his ear, "Go on, Davy boy. Tell him all about your big ideas." And then David Zaslav said, "I have 3 ideas. First, we're changing HBO Max to Max. Second, Project Popcorn. We're going to release all of our movies that we spent so much money on simultaneously in theaters and on Max. And third, the Alto Knights. $50 million budget. 2 Robert De Niro's. It's going to be bigger than The Godfather, baby." So what were the results of David Zaslav's 3 great ideas? Well, first, the Alto Knights made less than $10 million at the box office. I enjoyed the hell out of it, but that doesn't mean it was a good idea. Second, they ended up changing the name of their streaming service back to HBO Max. And third, as a result of Project Popcorn, Christopher Nolan left Warner Brothers for Universal. Cut to June 2025. We are now at the end of David Zaslav's 3rd year as CEO and president of Warner Brothers Discovery. And Zaslav wakes up and he says, "I have a 4th idea. Let's split Warner Brothers and Discovery in 2. essentially admitting that the previous 3 years had been a complete waste of time and that Zaslav himself had only accomplished 2 things during his tenure, making himself very, very rich and moving money around from point A to point B to point C enough times that it lowered Warner Brothers' debt obligations as well as their tax burden, and that in the year 2025 in America is enough to justify making yourself very, very rich. Meanwhile, across town at Paramount, Sherry Redstone, oh, my heart flutters at the mere mention of her name. Sherry Redstone pays a bribe to the President of the United States in the amount of $16 million so that she can finally get federal approval to sell her movie studio to the world's 4th richest person, Larry Ellison, and his son, whose name is also David. This is all 100% real, by the way. Now, this David Ellison, looks in his little mirror that morning and says, "I did it, Pa! I'm a Hollywood mogul! Just like Harvey Weinstein. Now fire everybody, get me a new set of veneers, and find the craziest person you can to run the news." And just like that, for a brief spell in the fall of 2025, little David Ellison was on top of the world. And his only regret was that Jeffrey Epstein was not still alive to see it all happen, because it certainly would have earned him an invite to the island. Now, cut to a few weeks later, and little David Ellison was already bored with his toys. And so he climbed up into Larry's lap and said, "Daddy, Daddy, I want to buy another movie studio, preferably one in the valley." And so Larry said, "Oh, you're going to need a new set of veneers, my boy, because we're going a-courtin'." And over the Thanksgiving holiday, father and son took their charm offensive over to Burbank and offered David Zaslav and the Warner Brothers board somewhere in the vicinity of $78 billion for ownership of their studio. And they were so nice about it. They were so nice about it. They even said that Zaz could stay on as co-CEO and co-chairman. This is a real text that David Ellison sent to David Zaslav on December 4th. And I know it's real because it was leaked by Paramount, because they have no idea how they're perceived by the world. This is a real text. "It would be the honor of a lifetime to be your partner and to be the owner of these iconic assets." That's what David Ellison texted to David Zaslav. I think that was probably around the time that David Zaslav stopped responding to David Ellison's texts. Because the Warner Brothers board rejected the first Paramount proposal, and then they rejected the second, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. Take a hint, Paramount. And then on December 5th, I'm just realizing that's the day after that text was sent. Really quickly, I have to read it again. On December 4th, David Ellison sent this text to David Zaslav. "It would be the honor of a lifetime to be your partner and to be the owner of these iconic assets." The very next day, Warner Brothers agreed to sell to Netflix for $72 billion. I'm sorry. I don't like any of this, but that is really funny. That's really, really funny. And when David Ellison heard this, he goes, "Dad! Daddy! What is this feeling? What is this feeling I'm feeling?" And then this week, the inevitable shitstorm that followed. Paramount is attempting a hostile takeover of Warner Brothers, and now they've got Saudi money and Jared Kushner money behind them. Saudi money and Jared Kushner money, what's the difference? Meanwhile, the rest of the movie industry is protesting the Netflix purchase, led by Christopher Nolan at the DGA. This is bad for Hollywood. This is bad for theatrical distribution, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have Democratic senators protesting it on the basis of being a monopoly. And then, of course, old President Trump has to get involved. But his brain is so riddled with dementia, it's impossible to follow his train of thought as to which side he's on. But Paramount is really trying to play the angles on this. On the one hand, they came out publicly and said they'd release 30-plus movies in theaters annually if they acquire Warner Brothers, trying to appease Christopher Nolan and the Hollywood industry. But apparently they also told Trump behind the scenes that they'd quote-unquote fix CNN, which is a Warner asset if they buy Warner Brothers. So they're trying to play all the angles. That usually doesn't work out, but we'll see. Meanwhile, Ted Sarandos from Netflix personally went to the White House to kiss the ring back in November, and he thinks that Trump is on his side. Trump doesn't know what fucking day of the week it is, so who knows? So what's going to happen here? And what should happen? Well, number one, nobody knows anything. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Number two, there is an argument being made that the Netflix deal won't go through because it very obviously and blatantly breaks anti-monopoly laws. That is true in theory, but it assumes we have a functioning DOJ, and it assumes that we have a president that doesn't operate like a mob boss. But unfortunately, neither of those things are true. This deal will be decided, like all deals these days, behind the scenes. And on the surface, that would seem to favor Paramount. Ellison is a Trump guy. Kushner is Trump's son-in-law. They are willing to do whatever Trump says to get the deal done. But Trump's a weird guy. He's a weird guy. And he loves power and success more than he loves his family. And right now, David Ellison and Paramount are coming off as a little too pick-me for Trump's liking, I think. A little too desperate, a little too pathetic. Whereas Ted Sarandos is coming off as more of the power player between the two. So who knows? Who knows where Trump ends up falling in this equation? Now, that being said, even if Trump sides with Netflix, you got to assume that much like the sale of Paramount to Skydance, there will have to be some form of graft or fealty paid to him to get this deal done. And if that's the case, I don't think Ted Sarandos will think twice about doing it. I don't think he'll think twice. So my guess, and I don't give a fuck about shit when it comes down to it, but my guess is that Netflix does buy Warner Brothers. I don't think there's enough semblance of a functioning society in America right now to stop it on anti-monopoly laws. And I think David Ellison has a little bit too much Kendall Roy in him to get this one over the finish line. In which case, the big question, the important question, what does this mean for the movies? What would that mean for the movies? On the one hand, the good news is that Paramount won't buy Warner Brothers. It's definitely a lesser of two evils, but the greater of two evils, I think, is clearly Paramount, which is now in its MAGA phase. Installing Barry Weiss as the head of CBS News, saying they'd fix CNN. I don't think we want Paramount to own Warner Brothers, right? I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think that would be good. The bad news, though, if Netflix does win this bid, the bad news is that one of the 5 major studios would now be owned by a company that has devoted its life to destroying theatrical distribution and is run by a guy who said that we should all just shut up and watch Lawrence of Arabia on our phones. Because what's the difference? It's just as good on your phone. Now, that being said, and here is where I'm going to risk a little bit of naivety, but I'm going to risk it because I think the reasoning is sound. The reason that Netflix has devoted its existence up to this point to undermining theatrical distribution is because it has not been in the business of theatrical distribution. It has been in an opposing business, the streaming business. But they never, even though they won the streaming wars and emerged as the clear leader in streaming, they never defeated theatrical distribution. Not even close. And yes, you can tell me how theatrical distribution has been down over the past couple years. Duh. COVID turned the entire world off for a year and a half. Of course, theatrical distribution has been slow for the past couple years. But what do we mean by slow? This year, the worldwide box office gross is going to be somewhere in the vicinity of $45 billion. This is a $45 billion a year industry that has been increasing year over year since COVID. And next year, all signs are pointing to 2026 being the biggest box office year since COVID. It might be one of the biggest box office years of all time if you look at all the movies coming out that are slated to come out next year. But let's say it has even just a sort of small marginal growth over this year. Let's say next year is a $50 billion year. $50 billion. This is a $50 billion industry. And there's a lot of things that I don't understand about the way the world works, but I do understand this. You don't just turn off a $50 billion industry because Daniel Craig was mad at you at a party and said that you were ruining movies. You don't just turn off a $50 billion industry. What I think Netflix will discover if it buys Warner Brothers, or what they likely already know and are already planning for, is that streaming and theatrical can coexist in a symbiotic relationship. In the same way that television and theatrical learn to coexist in a symbiotic relationship. And what I think Netflix will do as the owner of Warner Brothers is create a symbiotic mega company that will benefit both from streaming and from theatrical. And I think that's their plan. The only reason it hasn't been their plan previously is because they didn't own one of the major film studios. They didn't have the means to distribute as widely and effectively as a Warner Brothers. But now that they do, they will. And then in a couple of years, Apple will buy Disney and will do the same thing. Now, if you think that Netflix's purchase of Warner Brothers means the death of movie theaters, if you really think, and you're not just doing a clickbait thing for the clicks, if you really think that Netflix's purchase of Warner Brothers means the death of movie theaters, then your name is Chicken Fucking Little, and you need to grow up and learn your history. Movie theaters, like sports arenas, like the Greek amphitheater, like the Roman Colosseum, are in our fucking blood. No matter how comfy our couch is, no matter how big our television gets, no matter how obsessed we get with our fucking phones, we crave the experience of communal entertainment. And nothing, not social media, not AI, not fucking Netflix, can change the source code of humanity. The movie theaters aren't going away because Netflix bought Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is a distressed fucking asset. Somebody was going to buy it. And guess what? In 6 years, Netflix will probably sell it to somebody else. Or I'm sorry, are we suddenly in the only phase of movie history where that no longer happens? These studios change hands every decade, sometimes twice a decade. Why do we think it's suddenly different because it's happening now? That's a naive, ahistorical viewpoint, and I don't ascribe to it. Now, I do think the movies will evolve in the coming years. I think they will need to change in certain ways. I think theatrical distribution will change in certain ways. It already is. To appeal to changing tastes and expectations of what the theatrical experience is supposed to be. But once again, that's just the entire history of motion pictures. Show me the money! And by the money, I of course mean the weekend box office returns. That was a hell of a jump cut. Usually I do show me the money at the top of the show, near the top of the show. And I set it up a little bit more cleanly. But I've been watching Nouvelle Vague. I love a Godard jump cut. All right, what do we got here? What is going on at the box office this week? Five Nights at Freddy's 2 landed in the number one slot this week, or for last week at this point, with $64 million domestic and a worldwide total of $109 million. That is a massive opening for a movie whose production budget was only $40 to $50 million. Wow, wow, wow. And that is despite having to go toe-to-toe with the world-conquering Zootopia 2 in only its second weekend. That's honestly impressive. That's amazing. Zootopia 2, going into its third weekend, is up to $972 million. It's going to crack $1 billion probably before it hits its third weekend. And yet, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was number one. Unbelievable. And this is why Blumhouse, the production company responsible for the Five Nights at Freddy's movies, wasn't sweating their string of duds and flops earlier this year. We've talked about this a lot on Movies Baby. Wolfman, Woman in the Yard, dropped Megan 2.0. It was a really bad first half of the year for Blumhouse, but a really great second half of the year that just wiped that first half of the year off the map. Black Phone 2 made a bunch of money. Now Five Nights at Freddy's 2 made a bunch of money. And I don't think Blumhouse was ever sweating it, because some movies are just guaranteed box office. And despite a 14% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was always going to make its money, and then some. This is also why Jason Blum, the head of Blumhouse, came out at Comic-Con earlier this year dressed in the Freddy Fazbear animatronic suit from Five Nights at Freddy's, because that man knows which side his bread is buttered on. He sure does. And although Part 2 didn't equal Part 1's domestic haul, the original Five Nights at Freddy's movie made $80 million opening weekend. Part 2 still set a bunch of other box office records. Here we go. Biggest opening ever for a post-Thanksgiving theatrical release, beating Warner Brothers' 2003 Tom Cruise epic The Last Samurai. Biggest opening ever for the 49th weekend of the year, ahead of 2001's Warner Brothers movie Ocean's 11. Heard of it? I'm sorry, I thought movie theaters were dead. Biggest December horror opening ever, topping 1997's Scream 2. Biggest December opening for Universal Pictures, beating 2005's King Kong. I think that was a pretty big movie too, right? That's so weird. I thought the movie theaters were dead. Second largest horror opening of 2025, behind only, I said it earlier, The Conjuring Last Rites. And the third biggest opening ever for a PG-13 horror movie, behind the first Five Nights at Freddy's and World War Z. Now, how did Five Nights at Freddy's 2 do this? Well, it's the same reason that a Minecraft movie was such a massive hit earlier this year. it has a dedicated fan base that feels ownership over the material. And that second part is the key part. That second part is why the 14% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes doesn't matter in terms of the box office. Because this franchise is the property of its fans. And what the critics think about it is irrelevant to them. Five Nights at Freddy's is one of the best examples of how things become popular now. It didn't accrue this massive fan base solely or even primarily because of the video game itself. It accrued this massive fan base because of the way the game was engaged with online. Five Nights at Freddy's, the video game, is responsible for some of the most watched playthroughs on YouTube. It is a favorite game of several top Twitch streamers. And it is a very, very popular topic of discussion on Reddit. Five Nights at Freddy's has given birth to so many fan theories, so many labyrinthine fan theories. I tried to get into a Five Nights at Freddy's subreddit. I tried to watch a couple of the YouTube videos that decode all of its different meanings, and I felt like I was watching Room 237, that documentary about The Shining and all of the various fan theories about The Shining. That is the point where you have entered a rare air of fandom, where any criticisms of movie adaptations, anything like that, and not only it's just irrelevant. It doesn't matter. This is a true fan franchise. A true fan franchise. The fans own the material now. It doesn't matter what some screenwriter or director does. The fans own it, and they're going to have their own theories about the movie that plug into their theories about the game, and so on and so forth. And this is a pattern that you see with a lot of video games. And so that's why, not surprisingly, the dam has finally, after decades, burst on video game movies. This used to be such a hard thing for Hollywood to figure out. The video game adaptation. They were so bad at it for so long. And there's a lot that I love. I love the Jean-Claude Van Damme Street Fighter. I love the first Mortal Kombat movie. I enjoy some of those frickin' Uwe Boll movies. And you could argue that Uwe Boll is one of the main reasons that video game adaptations weren't successful in Hollywood previously, because that fucker bought up the rights to so many of them and then made his trash tax evasion movies. But the tide is turning. Because after the latest Super Mario Brothers movie, which was the second highest earning movie of 2023 after Barbie, and after the success of a Minecraft movie and Five Nights at Freddy's 1 and 2, get ready, baby. Get ready for a flood of video game movies coming your way. They're going to do the Grand Theft Auto movie finally. They're going to do the Call of Duty movie finally. They're going to do the Red Dead Redemption movie finally. And this, more than anything, this is why Hollywood and why the movies and the movie theaters always refuse to die. This is why they are like Michael Myers or Jason, or pick your unkillable monster. It's because as one sun sets, as comic book movies start to decline in popularity and box office gross, another sun always rises. Get ready for the era of the video game movie. It's already here. There's going to be another Super Mario Brothers movie next year, which is going to be one of the reasons why 2026 could be the biggest box office movie year of all time. But that's just box office. What about the movie itself? Let's talk about Five Nights at Freddy's 2. It's, of course, produced by Blumhouse. The same director-writer team is back here for the sequel. That's director Emma Tammy and writer Scott Cawthorn, who created the video game. Much of the original cast is also back. Josh Hutcherson, Elizabeth Lael, Matthew Lillard. I bet Quentin Quentin Tarantino was about to buy a ticket to Five Nights at Freddy's 2, and they said, wait, who's in this? Oh, I hate that guy. And they're joined by newcomers Skeet Ulrich. Love seeing Skeet back in the game. McKenna Grace. And UGA alum Wayne Knight. Go Dogs! Now, what the fuck is Five Nights at Freddy all about if you don't already know? Well, as listeners of this show probably do already know, in the 1980s, there was a restaurant arcade chain called Showbiz Pizza, which was a competitor to Chuck E. Cheese. And Showbiz Pizza's main attraction was an animatronic animal band called the Rockafire Explosion. Now, Five Nights at Freddy's asks the question, what if Showbiz Pizza was actually owned and operated by a serial killer who killed a bunch of kids and hid their bodies inside the animatronic animals, which then became possessed by the spirits of the dead kids, turning them into vengeful killing machines? And I gotta say, great horror premise. Hell of a horror premise. From Child's Play to Annabelle, kids' toys, kids' characters being possessed by evil spirits. Hell of a horror premise. And the sequel, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, is content to just sort of stay pretty close to that premise. There's one or two little narrative twists, but it's basically just abandoned pizza place, killer robots all over again. Which is also great. I love when a horror franchise doesn't reinvent the wheel just to reinvent the wheel. I love that Halloween 2 is essentially Halloween 1 all over again. There is pleasure in repetition. That's the whole point of genre. The problem with Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is that the movie itself, in its execution, is a careless, thoughtless pile of shit whose only animating impulse is to financially exploit that very dedicated fan base that it inherited from its source material. Why? What went wrong here? What is so bad about Five Nights at Freddy's 2? Well, first and foremost, it's not scary. And I don't mean, look at me, I'm a big tough man, nothing can scare me. I want to be scared. I am ready and willing to be scared. And I know this is PG-13, but so was Insidious, one of Blumhouse's early hits. And Insidious, which is a scary movie that scared me, and I loved being scared by it, provides a great counterpoint for what Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is missing. Pacing, tension, dread, the use of negative space, filmmaking. Insidious is using every tool in the horror toolbox. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 doesn't even know how to open the toolbox, much less what the tools inside are supposed to be for. And to keep this comparison going, Insidious also succeeds where Five Nights at Freddy's 2 fails because it makes great use of a classic horror device, turning something familiar into something monstrous. Your house is your enemy. Your dad is trying to kill you. Your toys dream of painting the walls with your blood. This, what Freud calls the uncanny, is the animus of horror, the familiar becoming monstrous. This is what drives horror. And Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is trying to do that. The animatronic animals at the pizza arcade are actually trying to kill you. It is trying to make the familiar monstrous, but the problem is that it misses in both directions. The animatronic animals are never fully established as familiar, as lovable, as fun. Compare that to Child's Play. One of the reasons why Child's Play succeeds so well in what it's doing is that it establishes Chucky as familiar. That boy loves his little Chucky doll. And you believe that Chucky doll loves him back. And that's why the turn is so scary. That's why the turn is so effective. But because Five Nights at Freddy's 2 never establishes the familiarity, it also never establishes the monstrous. These frickin' animatronic animals are never scary as monsters. They're too clunky. They're too clunky. And the transition from familiar to monstrous is completely fumbled. And because Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is not scary or campy or funny or meaningful in any way, what you're left with is a deeply, deeply boring movie that just sort of paddles in place for long enough to qualify as a feature film and then ends abruptly and without any sort of satisfying payoff. And I should clarify here that I don't mind when movies swing and miss. I'm way more forgiving of swings and misses. And swings and misses can be a lot of fun. That can be a hell of a ride. But Five Nights at Freddy's 2 doesn't even swing. It doesn't even attempt to swing. It doesn't make a single interesting decision. It doesn't take any risks. In fact, it seems weirdly petrified. It seems terrified of making any decisions. It's as though Blumhouse knew that it could just sleepwalk through the making of the movie and still make $100 million opening weekend, which is exactly what it did. So why put a single thought into it? Maybe if we put a thought into it, it'll be the wrong thought, and then we fuck up the gold mine. I'll give you one specific example that really stuck in my craw. In the movie, there is a group of ghost hunters who make a TV show about ghost hunting, and they come to the abandoned Freddy's Pizza place to investigate all these urban legends about the haunted animatronics and the dead kids and so on. And yes, this has become one of the most overused horror tropes over the last couple years. Characters hosting paranormal ghost hunter shows, true crime podcasts. It's become this overused meta, not really meta device that you see in a lot of horror movies. But that's not the problem. Again, I don't mind repetition. I don't mind tropes. Horror is about execution more than it's about originality. And you have bad examples of this trope in that atrocious I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot this year. One of the main characters was a true crime podcast host. And it brought nothing to the movie. It added nothing to the movie. And it felt very silly and hacky. But you also have very good, fun examples of this trope. Like in the horror movie Clown in the Cornfield, which came out earlier this year, which I loved. The kids in that movie make a sort of fake ghost hunter video series that they put on YouTube. And the way that that is tied into the plot and twisted around is very fun and inventive. So this could go either way. I'm not opposed to this trope in general. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the paranormal ghost hunter show is called Spectral Scoopers. Spectral Scoopers. It's the name of the show, and it's written on the side of their van. That has to be AI, right? That's like that is the most Chat GPT brained phrase I've ever heard in my life. Spectral Scoopers. It makes sense literally, but it's atrocious on every other level. Sound, phrasing, originality, fun. It's a terrible phrase that certainly had to have come from ChatGPT. But even if it did come from ChatGPT, even if for some reason Scott Cawthorn asked ChatGPT, hey, can I get 10 names for ghost hunter crews? Spectral Scoopers would be the one that you cross off immediately. You'd look at the list and you say, well, obviously not Spectral Scoopers. But even beyond the clunky, because it doesn't even work, because here's what would happen, I'm sure, which is what everybody does for everything now. We know we're being funny. But it's not funny. It's not funny either. And it's not played as funny in the movie. And even beyond the name itself, even beyond the first draft laziness of Spectral Scoopers, the little glimpses that we get of the Spectral Scoopers show in the movie are so botched and meaningless. Because it's always fun to do a show within a show. It's always fun to do a thing within a thing. A movie within a movie, a show within a movie, a show within a show. But here, the scenes we get of Spectral Scoopers are so fundamentally meaningless in the sense that nothing is happening. There's no joke. There's no fun. There's no fright. There's nothing. I felt like screaming at the screen, at the movie screen. And not for the last time in this movie. I felt like screaming at the screen, you have to do something! This is just the shape of an idea. You have to try to have an actual idea. Do something! Anything! And speaking of my screening, the only part of my screening that I enjoyed was, before the movie even began, overhearing the kid who was seated in front of me explaining to his dad several of the Five Nights at Freddy's fan theories. I genuinely loved that. I loved the passion and the enthusiasm and the attention to detail that kid was exhibiting. And I just wish that Blumhouse had given one solitary shit about this fan group instead of just treating them like an ATM. Which is why I'm giving Five Nights at Freddy's 2 the very rare half star, which according to the Movie's Baby rating system stands for a fucking disgrace. This movie isn't just bad, it's a fucking disgrace because it epitomizes the carelessness and timidity and complacency of Blumhouse Productions' output over the last 2 to 3 years. And Blumhouse Productions, as I've said on this show 100 times, is one of my favorite movie studios. Its guiding principle is, or was, high concept, low budget. And they put that principle into action with some of the most fun and electrifying and interesting pop horror franchises of the last 20 years. Insidious, The Purge. They also made some great elevated horror, gonzo horror, Get Out, Creep, Lords of Salem. I love Blumhouse, but I hate what they've become. And Jason Blum, God strike me dead if I'm wrong about this, has always seemed to me as good of a person as a studio head could possibly be. And again, the second I'm wrong about that, I apologize. But from what I've read about him and know about him, he seems as good of a person as a studio head can possibly be. And a lot of that comes from the fact that he was one of the sort of junior executives at Miramax in the 90s who was so traumatized by Harvey Weinstein's treatment of him and the other people that worked at Miramax that he left the movie industry for a while and had to go into therapy and had to have a whole recovery process because of the experiences he had working under Harvey Weinstein at Miramax in the 90s. And so when he came back into the movie industry and created Blumhouse, one of his guiding principles, in addition to high concept, low budget, was, I'm going to be the anti-Weinstein. I'm not going to treat people like that. I can be successful without treating people like that. And he proved that he could. And so I've always been on the side of Blumhouse. I love Blumhouse. They freaking resurrected M. Night Shyamalan's career with The Visit and Split. But ever since they had a breakout hit with the first Megan in 2022, they've really, really deeply lost their way. And Jason Blum knows this. I've never seen this before. He did a full mea culpa press tour after Megan 2.0, essentially saying, I'm sorry, we fucked up. We fell asleep at the wheel. We'll do better. And I love that, and maybe they will. And I know that Black Phone 2 and Five Nights at Freddy's 2 were already in the can at that point. But when are you going to get the hands on the wheel, baby? I know these last two made money, but that's not what Blumhouse is. This isn't what Blumhouse is. These stinkers aren't what you're all about. I don't think they're unaware of this over at Blumhouse. I hope and I think they will get their act together going into 2026, and I hope they do. Because we need low-budget, high-concept horror hits, but we need them to actually be good movies. It's almost like in sports, to use a sports comparison, namely a baseball comparison, when players get what's called the yips. The yips. The yips is when a professional athlete who spends his entire life practicing a sport and becoming so good at it that he's one of the 50, 100 best at that sport in the entire world. When a professional athlete suddenly and inexplicably loses a athletic skill, a key athletic skill, it usually refers to players who stop being able to throw a baseball accurately. It often happens to catchers. It happened to an incredible second baseman, Chuck Knobloch, in the 90s. Suddenly and inexplicably, some wiring goes wrong, and they just suddenly can't throw a ball accurately. It's called the yips. It feels like Blumhouse has the cinematic yips. That something went wrong in the wiring, and they got in their head a little bit too much, and now they've forgotten how to make a good movie. And I hope they shake off the yips soon, because we are going to need Blumhouse to be at full strength as we go into this new era of Netflix acquisitions and David Ellison and AI and all the rest of it. Blumhouse, we need you more than ever, baby. I'm begging you to get your shit together. And not just box office wise. Please get your shit together. Now, thankfully, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was not the only movie I saw this past week. Let's talk about the good ones, starting with No Other Choice. Oh, baby! This is the movie I've been waiting all year for. No Other Choice is the new movie from Park Chan-wook, who is the writer-director of The Handmaiden, Decision to Leave, The Vengeance Trilogy. That's Old Boy, Lady Vengeance, and I Need Another Finger, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And when you look at Park Chan-wook's career, when you go back to The Vengeance Trilogy, which came out between 2002 and 2005, you find a dynamic, funny, visceral, brutal, provocative filmmaker. I love The Vengeance Trilogy. But with his two most recent films, before No Other Choice, I'm talking about The Handmaiden and Decision to Leave. With those two movies, Park Chan-wook found an even higher level. He ascended with those two movies to all-timer level. There was just such a greater level of detail and nuance in the storytelling. There was even a higher degree of artistry and precision and inventiveness in the camera work and the editing. With The Handmaiden and Decision to Leave, Park Chan-wook entered rare air, and I think really firmly established himself as one of the greatest living filmmakers. And I'm glad to say that with No Other Choice, that trajectory has continued. Park Chan-wook now has an argument for one of the great 3-movie runs in history. Handmaiden, Decision to Leave, No Other Choice. That is one of the great 3-movie runs ever. And he is now not just a genre provocateur, and I don't mean that dismissively. I love genre provocateurs. He is now an all-time great cinematic artist. And I'm not going to say a whole lot about No Other Choice because it's not in wide release yet, and it is a movie that you want to go into having just seen the trailer, not knowing much beyond that. I will say this. Number one, see it as soon as you can. It's a top 5 movie of the year, in my opinion. Number 2, this is Park Chan-wook's purest comedy yet. His movies are always funny, always darkly funny, but this movie is first and foremost a dark comedy with some absolutely incredible slapstick set pieces. This movie is about a guy who has risen through the ranks of the paper industry in Korea, and has the perfect life. Perfect life. The way that his home, which is beautiful, is color corrected in the opening scene is so funny. It's color corrected like it's a postcard. And the opening scene ends with him doing a group hug with his family, his beautiful family, and his beautiful dogs, and saying, "This is perfect. This is perfect." But then he gets fired after an American company buys his company, and his life starts going to shit, and a bunch of other things go wrong. And they were on a bit of a knife's edge money-wise, and so without much money coming in, the dominoes start falling, the house of cards starts falling down. And he is desperate to get another job in the paper industry, which is the only industry he knows. It's referenced that he either has a high school education or dropped out of high school, but this is it. The only thing that he's a professional at is paper. And he needs to get another job in the paper industry, or his whole life is truly, irrevocably going down the shitter. The problem is there aren't many jobs in the paper industry left, and there are some really, really great other candidates. And so he has no other choice but to try and kill off the other leading candidates for those for these jobs so that he becomes the leading candidate. This movie is not only funny, it is transcendently funny. It is Dr. Strangelove. It is Duck Soup. It is The Jerk. It is doing comedy as cinema, comedy as high satire, but also comedy as slapstick, as visceral slapstick. It is working on all cylinders. And it builds these miraculous comedic set pieces that will blow your mind. These scenes that just keep giving and giving and giving and have layer on layer on layer, detail on detail on detail, keep paying off and paying off and paying off, but without ever becoming sort of overcomplicated and overstuffed, because Park Chan-wook is such an elegant master at navigating chaotic cinema and turning chaotic cinema into coherence. I love to see when a veteran director becomes more youthful as they get older, specifically in terms of their camera work. This movie also reminded me a lot of Megalopolis, that suddenly this old-timer has such a skip in their step. Because you get the best of both worlds. You get this wildly inventive camera that is free and creative and experimental. It never stops moving. Every single shot contains like 6 different creative choices. It's a feast. But it also has the expertise of a veteran to control those choices and keep them all moving in the same direction. And so that it never feels indulgent or overstuffed. The performances in this movie are fantastic. Fantastic top to bottom. And just a small note, I love that they say the name of the movie in the movie like 20 times. When they say the name of the movie in the movie once, it usually sucks. When they say the name of the movie in the movie 20 times, it rules, because it becomes like this rhythmic chant. The name of the movie becomes more than the name of the movie. It becomes a motto. It becomes an epigram. It becomes meaningful as almost a sort of religious, in a religious sense, the way that everybody in a church will say the same words at the same time. No other choice becomes the rhythmic sort of heartbeat of the movie, and the meaning of the phrase changes as many times as it's said. No Other Choice is a truly great movie, a truly great satire. I give it 4.5 stars. See it at your earliest convenience. Similarly, The Secret Agent. The Secret Agent is a Brazilian film directed by Kleber Mendonça Filho and starring Wagner Moura. It takes place during the turmoil of the Brazilian military dictatorship that lasted from the mid-60s to the mid-80s. This is the same time period that was explored in Walter Salles' excellent movie I'm Still Here from last year. But whereas I'm Still Here felt like more of a sort of macrocosmic view of the political repression of that era and was more aimed at like kind of the center of that repression, The Secret Agent plays more like a microcosmic story that takes place in a corner of that era, in a small pocket of northern Brazil. The movie is about a former professor who has to go into hiding after he runs afoul of a corrupt, connected industrialist who then sends a couple hitmen after him to end his life. The Secret Agent is smart and scary and sexy. It's sexy and funnier than I thought it was going to be. It does such a good job of celebrating the human spirit as much as it condemns human evil and human atrocities, and that blend is intoxicating. And as Wagner Moura was saying in a Q&A that I got to see after the screening of the movie, is very uniquely Brazilian at heart. That blend of celebrating the human spirit, the unconquerable human spirit, at the same time that you're acknowledging the reality of human evil and human atrocities. And speaking of Wagner Moura, he is incredible in this movie. Incredible. He brings real old-fashioned movie star charisma to the performance, but without sacrificing artistry and nuance. A true talent. And I won't give away exactly what this means, but he plays two characters in this movie, which I had no idea was coming. And he pays it off big time. Big time. Speaking of that, I love the ways that this movie upended my expectations of it. Watching the trailer, I was expecting a little bit more of a Goodfellas, a little bit more of a fast-paced sort of mob crime thing. And it certainly has elements of that. But this movie is way more Kafka than it is Goodfellas. It has the structure of, the trial or the castle. Think of any, sort of Kafka novel or short story. In that, you're just with the protagonist, and then the protagonist finds themselves in the middle of this vast, terrifying bureaucracy, the functioning of which is sort of mysterious. And then together with the character, you have to find your way to the sort of top of this bureaucracy, to the meaning of it all from the inside out, and try to make sense of why everything feels so clandestine and tenuous. I loved that structure. I love the structure of this movie. I give The Secret Agent 4 stars. I thought it was great. Great. Also see it at your earliest convenience. And really quickly before we wrap up, I also saw SISU Road to Revenge, the sequel to 2022 SISU. This is a Nazi killing movie. It is a Nazi killing movie without any bullshit, without any extra stuff. This movie is about a badass Finnish ex-commando killing a bunch of Nazis. And it fucking rocks. It's essentially one long scene. It's one of the truest and best B action movies I've seen all year. At one point, this ex-commando who refuses to die, they call him the man who refuses to die. He front flips a truck, a massive Mad Max Fury Road style truck. He front flips it over a tank. In case you need any incentive to watch this movie beyond the fact that a bunch of Nazis die horribly in it. This movie fucking rocks. I had a blast. 3 stars. Next week on Movies Baby, and thank you so much for joining me this week. Next week on Movies Baby, oh God, I'm going to watch a couple Netflix movies. We'll talk about Jay Kelly, the new Noah Baumbach movie with George Clooney and Adam Sandler and Billy Crudup that's on Netflix. We'll also talk about the new Knives Out movie, Wake Up Dead Man, also coming out on Netflix. I also really hope I get out to see this movie Ella McKay, which I saw the trailer for it, and it's such a 90s movie, early 2000s movie. I was like, they don't make movies like anymore. What's going on here? I was like, I need one word to make this make sense. I need one name to make this make sense. And then Joe the Philly movie freak was like, James L. Brooks directed that. And I was like, there it is. There it is. It is such a James L. Brooks movie, which means I cannot wait to watch it, baby. Oh, I have been dying for 2025's As Good as It Gets, and I think it might be Ella McKay. So I hope I get out to see that, and if so, I'll review it next week. Also, Cineverse, home of the Terrifier franchise, has a Silent Night, Deadly Night remake coming out this week. I got to see that. So it's going to be a fun week next week on Movies Baby. Next week will probably be the last sort of official episode of the year. I'll try and sort of touch base, check in after I see Marty Supreme, Avatar, etc. Maybe that might also be a full episode, TBD. And of course, we have our Weekend at Bergman's 80s tournament that is finishing up on Patreon. You're going to want to check that out on patreon.com/moviesbaby. The Elite 8 will likely be out this weekend, and then the Final Four and Championship round out the following weekend. And then we also, Joe the Philly Movie Freak and I, the Georgia Movie Dog, have another special episode of Movies Baby that will be coming out before the end of the year, in which we are going to pick our 25 favorite, best, whatever you want to call it, movies. It's favorite, actually. I'm going to say it's favorite. Forget best. I know Tarantino's an asshole, but reading his list made me go back and reevaluate my own list, and I said, why get in the Bermuda Triangle of best? Just do favorite. Just do favorite. Honor your experience of the 21st century at the movies and do favorite. So my list is going to, and Joe's list, and our combined list will honor our experience watching movies throughout the 21st century. And so that means it's going to be favorite. So make sure you join the Patreon. You can sign up for a free trial, 7-day free trial. You can join for free and then just get alerts of all the stuff we do and participate in the polls. But either way, this episode, our favorite movies of the 21st century, 25 favorite movies, is going to be unforgettable. I promise you that. Thank you so much once again for listening to this show, watching this show, supporting me on Patreon. It means the world. The future is bright, not just for this show in 2026, but for the movies themselves and for movie theaters. I truly believe that. I truly believe that. And I'll see you next time. Bye.